Now in this lecture, let's try to talk about what is the definition of OpenAPI specification. If someone asks you what is really an OpenAPI specification, you should be in a position to give an answer. So let's try to discuss about the same. So like you can see here, OpenAPI specification in a short form, we can also call it as OAS. So Open API specification. So that's a full description of OAS. So whenever someone says OAS or whenever I use this inside this course as a OAS, it means Open API specification. So please make a note of that. Now, if you ask me what exactly is an Open API specification, the definition is very simple. Open API helps us in defining or specifying our HTTP based, especially REST APIs. Like with the help of OpenAPI definitions or specifications, which I can write in the form of YAML or JSON file, I can describe my APIs. When I say describing APIs, I can describe how my input structure is going to be, how my response structure of my API is going to look like, what are the mandatory fields, what are the length restrictions, what are the valid value restrictions. So all those details I can define with the help of OAS or OpenAPI specification. So that's the simple or smallest definition that you can provide. So if someone asks you, simply say that OpenAPI specification describes our HTTP REST APIs, especially how the request or response structure will look like for a specific API. And apart from describing the request and response structure of an API using OpenAPI specification, we can also include information like where these APIs are hosted, what are the host name details, what are the server details, using which my consumers, they can invoke the REST APIs that I have exposed as an producer. So it's obvious, right? The very first question someone will ask you if you give your APIs to them for consumption is, what are the endpoint URLs? What are the server details? So that kind of information also we can include inside the OpenAPI specification. And apart from the server details, we can also define what are the security requirements, what are the authorization, what are the authentication mechanisms that we are using for the APIs communication. We can't just build the APIs which can be invoked or consumed by anyone. So inside real world applications or inside real world APIs, the security is a major requirement, and with the help of OpenAPI specification, we can define the security or authorization details as well, using which my consumers can get a good idea how to consume my APIs. And like I was telling before, OpenAPI specification is being maintained by an open source community under the Linux Foundation umbrella. So since there is an open source community, anyone can contribute, and since this is not being controlled by any particular organization or any particular community, anyone can contribute towards it, anyone can provide feedback. Like in future, if there is an improvement that we can bring inside this OpenAPI, we as a developers or as a community, we can always propose that to this open source community. And if it makes sense and if it is going to help majority of the developers, then definitely this open source community will adopt this feedback. So that's one more major advantage that we have with the OpenAPI specification. And the last point that I want to highlight here is, since this OpenAPI specification is being controlled by open source community, and since there is a lot of openness, and this encourages a vast amount of developers to create tools around it, because if there is a standards which is not going to change from organization to organization, and if there is a thumb rule that everyone is going to use the same standard, then definitely some developer or some community or some organization, they can think of tools that can automate the process around APIs communication or APIs development. So that's a beauty or the advantage that OpenAPI specification also has. It has a lot of tools that supports OpenAPI specification standards, using which the developer's life will be very, very easy. And we are going to discuss such kind of tools in this course as well. So this is all high level details about OpenAPI specification. This is just a definition. I know you might have a lot of questions like how to define OpenAPI specifications for a particular API that I have. So don't worry, please be patient. We are going to discuss all those details one by one. So now you are clear about what is an definition of OpenAPI specification. Let's try to discuss advantage of using OpenAPI specification in the next lecture. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.